In ancient times, women played distinct and fascinating roles within their societies, each shaped by cultural, religious, and social contexts. The lives of women in ancient civilizations, particularly in Rome, Greece, and Egypt, were a reflection of the values and power dynamics of those times. Despite facing significant restrictions in many areas, women managed to hold important roles in both domestic and public spheres. Let's begin with ancient Greece, particularly Athens, which had one of the most restrictive societies for women. Athenian women had limited rights and were often viewed as secondary to men. Girls were typically married at around the age of 15, while men waited until they were about 30. Athenian society saw women primarily as childbearers and caretakers of the home. Their education, if they received any, focused on skills that would help them run a household, such as weaving, cooking, and managing servants. Women in Athens rarely participated in public life, being confined to their homes for most of their lives, except during religious festivals. They spent their time weaving, spinning wool, and caring for children. Their seclusion was considered a virtue, symbolizing modesty and devotion to their family. However, despite their restricted role in public, women in ancient Greece were involved in managing domestic affairs. Running a household in such an economy meant overseeing slaves, controlling family finances, and ensuring the household's well-being. This responsibility gave women some measure of power and authority within the home, though they remained legally and socially subordinate to men. Athenian women also participated in important life rituals, such as weddings and funerals, which were significant moments that involved specific female roles, including the preparation of the bride or the care for the deceased's body. Sparta, in contrast, had a completely different view of women. Spartan women had much more freedom compared to their Athenian counterparts. They were educated similarly to boys, trained in physical fitness, and allowed to own property. Spartan women were entrusted with running estates while their husbands were away at war. They enjoyed significant autonomy and were highly respected for their role in maintaining the household and producing strong offspring. Spartan society valued physical strength and health, and this extended to women. Spartan girls were encouraged to exercise and remain fit, believing that healthy women would give birth to strong children, crucial for maintaining Sparta's military strength. The role of women in Greek religion was one of the few areas where women could actively participate in public life. Priestesses played essential roles in various religious cults, and women were responsible for important religious rituals. In Athens, for instance, women participated in the Thesmophoria, a fertility festival in honor of Demeter. The Pythia, or Oracle of Delphi, was another example of a woman who held immense power and influence. She relayed prophecies that were sought by rulers, military leaders, and commoners alike. These oracles shaped many important decisions in the ancient world. The role of religious women extended beyond simple participation. For example, priestesses in some Greek temples were considered intermediaries between the gods and mortals, and their actions during rituals were seen as critical to ensuring the favor of the gods. When it came to appearance, ancient Greek women were typically dressed in garments like the peplos, or chiton, made of wool or linen. These garments were secured with pins and girdles, and women wore their hair long, often braided or styled elaborately for special occasions. Makeup and cosmetics played a role in enhancing their appearance, with Greek women using olive oil as a skin moisturizer and lead-based powders to whiten their faces. Jewelry was another important aspect of their attire, with gold, silver, and precious stones used to adorn the body. Perfumes made from myrrh, rose, and other natural ingredients were commonly used by wealthier women to add to their allure. Greek women also paid significant attention to their hair. The styles varied depending on the city-state and social status, with intricate braids and buns being common among the upper class. Hair was often dyed or bleached to conform to ideal beauty standards. In some city-states, such as Sparta, practicality in appearance was valued more highly, and women wore simpler styles, reflecting the society's focus on physical prowess and strength over aesthetic beauty. Moving westward to ancient Rome, the situation for women was somewhat similar to that of Greece, although Roman women had slightly more freedom. Roman women were still expected to fulfill their roles as wives and mothers, but they could also be involved in business and own property. However, their legal status was often controlled by a male guardian, whether it was their father, husband, or a close male relative. Women in Rome could divorce, but after divorce, any children from the marriage legally belonged to the father. Despite these limitations, some Roman women wielded considerable influence, especially those within the imperial family. Figures like Agrippina the Younger, mother of Emperor Nero, and Julia Domna, wife of Emperor Septimius Severus, played pivotal roles behind the scenes, influencing political decisions and acting as patrons of the arts. Roman law also allowed some women, particularly those who had borne multiple children, to become legally independent, further expanding their opportunities. In ancient Rome, women were expected to maintain a dignified appearance. They wore the stola, a long sleeveless tunic, and covered their heads with palla, a large shawl. Roman women often styled their hair in elaborate curls and used cosmetics made from natural ingredients like beeswax and red ochre for their lips. While makeup was an essential part of elite Roman women's appearance, it was also seen as an indicator of moral character. Excessive use of cosmetics was sometimes criticized as a sign of vanity or immorality. Hair in Roman society was also a significant aspect of a woman's identity. Some Roman women used wigs made from the hair of captured slaves to create extravagant styles, especially during the reign of the later emperors. Roman women, like their Greek counterparts, were also involved in religious life. The Vestal Virgins, priestesses of the goddess Vesta, were some of the most respected women in Roman society. They were responsible for maintaining the sacred fire of Vesta and performed important religious rituals. These women enjoyed special privileges, such as the ability to own property, the freedom to make a will, and the honor of being buried in a special location after their 30 years of service. However, failing in their duties came with harsh penalties, including being buried alive for breaking their vow of chastity. In Egypt, women enjoyed a level of freedom that was unparalleled in the ancient world. Women in ancient Egypt could own property, run businesses, and act as witnesses in court. They could even initiate divorce, and unlike in Rome or Greece, they were not seen as the property of their husbands. The concept of ma'at, which emphasized harmony and balance, was central to Egyptian culture, and this was reflected in gender roles. While men held the highest positions in society, women were not excluded from positions of power. The most notable example of female power in Egypt is Hatshepsut, one of the most successful pharaohs of ancient Egypt. She ruled as a king, even adopting male regalia, including the false beard traditionally worn by pharaohs. Women in Egypt could also hold significant religious roles, particularly as priestesses. The title of God's wife of Amun was one of the most prestigious positions a woman could hold, giving her influence that rivaled the king's. Egyptian women's freedom extended into their daily lives as well. They could engage in various professions, such as weaving, baking, brewing, and even becoming physicians or scribes. Women were the primary brewers of beer, an essential part of the Egyptian diet and religious rituals. Egyptian women were also closely involved in religious life, with goddesses like Isis, Hathor, and Bastet playing crucial roles in the Egyptian pantheon. These deities were not only worshipped, but were also seen as embodiments of feminine power, reinforcing the status of women within society. Women from lower social classes in Egypt often worked as domestic servants or in the fields, while elite women managed households or served as priestesses in temples. However, unlike other ancient civilizations, even women of modest means in Egypt could own land and pass on wealth to their children, giving them a measure of economic independence. The life of women across these three ancient civilizations, Greece, Rome, and Egypt, varied greatly depending on their culture, class, and region. In Greece, the divide between the freedoms of Spartan and Athenian women was stark, while in Rome, women's rights were slightly more progressive, particularly in terms of property ownership and divorce. In Egypt, Women enjoyed the highest degree of autonomy and could even rise to the highest office in the land. However, while women in these societies could hold power, especially within religious contexts, their personal and public freedoms were often restricted by male-dominated societal structures. The degree to which women could exercise power and autonomy largely depended on their social class, family background, and the region in which they lived. Women from the upper class enjoyed more privileges, including better education, wealth, and access to public religious roles. They could afford luxurious clothing, expensive jewelry, and had slaves or servants to assist with their household duties. Conversely, women from lower classes or slaves had far fewer rights and freedoms. They were often tasked with hard labor, including farming, spinning, and working in marketplaces. Slaves in ancient Rome, for instance, had no personal rights and were considered the property of their owners. Additionally, elite women were often restricted by strict moral codes and expected to adhere to high standards of virtue, while lower-class women had fewer expectations but were also less respected by society. Yet, despite these distinctions, women in both lower and upper classes contributed significantly to their society's economic and social structures. In conclusion, while women in ancient times were often constrained by societal norms and legal restrictions, they nonetheless found ways to exert influence and maintain autonomy. Through their roles as mothers, wives, religious figures, and in some cases rulers, women were essential to the fabric of ancient societies. Their contributions, though often overlooked in male-dominated historical narratives, were vital to the development and sustainability of their civilizations. Thus, the story of ancient women, whether as influential queens, powerful priestesses, or everyday citizens, offers us a glimpse into a world where they played multifaceted roles. Although often constrained, their ability to navigate societal structures and maintain agency makes their stories as relevant today as they were millennia ago.